I want to thank you so much for joining us today and welcome you into Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, the financial advisors and the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about them, the entire team over there on the website, welcomehomefp.com. You can also give a call if you have questions about things we talked about this week on the show. You want a second opinion on your retirement outlook as it stands right now. You want a first opinion on it. The number 804-635-3550. As a reminder, this is a complimentary conversation, 804-635-3550 or online, welcomehomefp.com. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined, as I am every episode, with the father-son team. Ralph, Tim, glad to be with you once again. How are you today?
Doing great.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to spend with the listeners. Again, if they have concerns, I think we all do aspire to retire, maybe not necessarily sure how we go about getting there. And, you know, sometimes people think, gee, if I had more money, my retirement worries, they would be over. Maybe, maybe not. A new survey asked people who have over $1 million saved, what are your retirement concerns? And here is their list. Number 1, the influence of politics on markets. Number 2, the market being overdue for a correction. Number 3, inflation. Number 4, AI possibly taking their job. Number 5, long-term health expenses. Number 6, personal debt. And number 7, rising mortgage rates, making it too expensive to move. So I can't help but feel like this all sounds pretty familiar. Do you guys find that you're solving the same concerns for people regardless of their level of wealth?
Oh, absolutely. I think whether someone has 200,000 saved or 2 million saved, you know, there are surprisingly similar uncertainties, if you will. But can you give us number 1 again, Chris?
The influence of politics on markets.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I think that's one of the biggest concerns that people have. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, whether you've got a little bit or you got a lot saved, there's just a lot of things that are making people a little bit scared, right? I mean, people worry about inflation. Obviously, you know, it's kind of the same old things, market volatility, healthcare costs. You know, there's so many people that we meet with that don't want to retire until 65 just to get Medicare and not have to come out of pocket for, you know, their own plan, you know.
Sure.
I think the biggest thing that what's not changing or isn't necessarily the concern itself is how it's expressed, right? Coming down to politics, you know, there's so many things that are happening right now coming up on midterms and what have you. People tend to get concerned, right? There's just a lot of craziness that's happening. Let's call it that. Let's keep it politically correct here. But I think everybody is somewhat concerned on where the markets are going to head and how things have taken place. If you look at the last 2 years, the stock market's almost kind of mimicking one another, mirroring one another. How's the rest of this year going to finish out? And I think, you know, there's a lot of folks that don't believe that $5 million is going to cut it anymore just because of all the things that are happening. But yeah, I think that's one of those things that we've been, you know, having conversations with quite a few folks as of late, and they are concerned.
And I would say most people, if they've got a lot of money, they're not greedy because they want more or worried about what's going on. They're more concerned that, or they understand that the markets can turn quickly, and that would really affect their retirement. So they need to understand that, you know, they spent years and years of saving money for their retirement, their nest egg, whatever you want to call it, that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And their biggest fear is really not missing out on the gains because they're too greedy. It's just that, do they have enough money to do the things they've always dreamed of? Do they have enough money that just make sure they pay their bills, do the things that they've always wanted to do? And one of the things that no matter how much money you have, you need to understand that stock market doesn't care whether you've got a lot of money or a little bit of money. It's going to do what it's going to do.
Right.
And you got to be prepared to, you know, say, do I have enough time? If you're young, you've got plenty of time if the market takes a turn. But if you're fixing to retire, guess what happens? That paycheck that you thought you were going to have because of your investment accounts was in the millions. Now it's half the size. May not be as big as you thought it would be at this point in time. So I would say to a lot of people, you know, peace of mind doesn't come with predicting the market. You know, we don't ever know. Anybody that tells you they know what the market's going to do by the end of this year or next year or 5 years from now, you need to kind of run away from them because they either are on something or they're hallucinogen or something like that. And I would say so many people, you know, all these recent headlines wonder whether your, you know, retirement savings are going to be enough. you need to have a written plan to make sure you kind of understand. You need to make sure that plan is kind of protected. And at the same time, you might need a second opinion. And don't be afraid to ask. The goal isn't to beat the market. It's actually have enough money to do the things that you want to do.
Right.
And make sure that the government has the least amount of in your pocket, pulling it out of your pocket as you can, because if you have all your money in pre-tax accounts, guess what happens? You're going to be paying taxes on it. So you need to make some strategic moves so you can reduce that as much as you can. But I would say if you're not sure how things are looking for you, it's probably a good idea to have a second opinion. Give us a call.
Yeah, and I think, that's the big thing is we help our clients build retirement plans that are designed to withstand these common concerns. And, no matter what year or what political arena or whatever, there's always going to be concerns because we don't know what tomorrow brings. He's talking about next year or 5 years from now. Hell, we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like.
Right.
So I think it's important because, timing's everything and you can't time it. There's so many people that have done well with savings. There's so many middle-class Americans now that, they've done well, $1 million, 2 million, maybe 5 or 10. But at the end of the day, they don't feel confident because they don't know where their income's going to come from. They know they've got investments and they know their investments have done well, but it's going to be a little bit different when we don't have that guaranteed income coming from the employer.
Ralph, you said the market doesn't care how much money you've got tied to it. It's going to do what it's going to do. In the same way, the grocery store, the utility company, it doesn't care what the market is doing. It's going to need to make sure that, you're paying for your services out there. And so having that income coming in, which is a little bit different than, when you're in the working world and you're just relying on that paycheck or that paycheck is going to be coming in. Now it is on you, the money that you've saved up until this point to provide those paychecks. And so maybe it's comforting to know that the problems that you have, with what you've saved up are going to be pretty similar to the concerns of someone who's got millions and millions of dollars. But what are you doing about it? Well, you got to put a plan in place, whether that is that second opinion, second set of eyes on what you have, whether that is that first opinion. If you've just been hoping right now that it's working, maybe not the best strategy. Pick up the phone, schedule a time to speak with the Shorts, with the team at Welcome Financial Partners for that complimentary retirement roadmap. Start putting that together. 804-635-3550. Or you can go to the website as well, schedule a time there, find out more about the events that they've got going on, how to attend those, meet them in a more informal setting. That is at welcomehomefp.com. Does your digital life need a spring cleaning? A new survey found the average person has more than 1,000 unread emails. I am ashamed to admit that I'm very much above average in that regard. We're not going to get into that, though. But that's not counting all the unread texts and social media notifications. So my question for the listeners out there is, when is the last time you did the same to your retirement portfolio? Guys, what kind of spring cleaning might it need, and what could you potentially find?
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I'm in the same boat as you. I won't tell you what the actual number is, but yeah, because you get so much junk. If you're not cleaning as you go, you're going to run into some issues. Mm-hmm. But, there's a lot of portfolios that collect clutter over the years, just like the garage does. I'm waiting on Dad to make a joke about my garage, but we did do a little purge this weekend, so I think we'll be in better shape. But, people change jobs, so they've got old accounts that they might not have rolled into new ones, and they're just kind of hanging out there and not doing anything. And that's where I think one of the biggest issues that we see is people kind of outside, out of mind. They see their statements, they know things are happening, but they don't quite know what is happening. And I think that's one of the big things that we've got to sit down and talk to folks about is there's no sense in just leaving accounts scattered out there. What can you do? I think there's a lot of things that are going to come into play, but, you clean those things up, you be more efficient. That's one of my favorite words. If you can become more efficient with your investments, I think things are going to end up being a little bit better for you.
And I would say for a lot of people, they forget sometimes that they have an old 401k somewhere. I can tell you a client had called in earlier this past month saying that they had received some information and they cashed it out and put it in their bank account, and it was over $100,000 in an old 401k, and it was past 60 days. So I said, do you know what you just got through doing? And I basically said, you just shot yourself in the foot because now you got $100,000 extra that you got to declare as income this year and pay taxes on. And they said, well, why didn't they tell me at the bank? I'm like, that's not their job. Their job is just to take the order that you gave them. So that's kind of why you needed to call us and say, you've been a client, so why didn't you call us? Well, they told me they didn't need to do that. Well, okay, you paid for the consequences. So I would say that, most Americans are probably shocked when they start thinking about retirement and how much risk they have. Because most people, and Tim will say this to you too, is that a lot of people when they start work haven't changed their allocation in their 401k and they're 65 years old right now. So what you were doing in your 20s should not be what you're doing in your 60s, particularly when you're coming out for retirement. And, retirement isn't about having the biggest account balance when you retire. It's about knowing how your money is organized, working efficiently, and positioned to support the lifestyle that you've always wanted. So if you got old 401ks scattered around and haven't reviewed your investments in a while, now may be the perfect time to do some of that financial cleaning. One simple review may uncover opportunities you never thought about or heard about. So that's kind of why it's important for you to take control of your financial goals.
Yeah, and it is important. I mean, markets change, tax laws change, retirement goals evolve. I mean, there's a lot of things there. So, investments that made sense 10 years ago might not fit any longer. So that's why, having those reviews, having that cleanup, whether it's spring, summer, winter, or fall, it's always important.
How often when you guys do reviews do you shine a light on, fees that people may be paying unnecessarily, or perhaps even redundancies in their investments where they think that they're quote unquote diversified, but really it's just they've got a lot of the same holdings just under different names?
Oh, yeah. No, we see that quite a bit. And that's one of the biggest things that we uncover is people say, well, I'm diversified. And it's like, okay, great. You've got those 10 funds, but do you realize the biggest holdings the same across all those funds? And, that's where I think a lot of people, especially when they do it themselves, they feel like, hey, if I buy into a fund, I've got a fund manager and they're going to take care of this, that, and the other. And it doesn't necessarily work that way.
And I would say a lot of people, too, when they would come in, they forgot about a couple of accounts. I remember one nurse came in. She had left a hospital 25 years ago with about $10,000 in it. So she finally found us through investigating what it is that she had. And next thing we know, we find out that because of her account hadn't been looked at for quite a while, all the fees that was coming into it, being charged to it, there was nothing left in her account. It had been the hospital had been sold 3 or 4 times, so they lost track of her and all that type of situation. But yeah, that's one of the things that really does happen out there in the real world on Main Street.
Out of sight, out of mind, out of money. I was hoping it could be the opposite way, where she hadn't looked at it in a couple of years and it grew. But the opposite, like you said, fees can do a number on things. It is very easy, I think, to have. You mentioned the risk tolerance being the same in the working world. I think it's perhaps difficult to really understand how much risk you're taking when you're still in the working world, because regardless of what the market is doing, if you're contributing to your 401k, you're still putting money in there. So you're not really seeing the full loss. Whereas if you are retired, you're now relying on that for income, and the market takes a pullback. Well, you're not contributing anymore, so you're seeing it, and quite frankly, you may be accelerating it by pulling money out as well. Same vein, how often does that conversation come up where people get a real kind of sticker shock when they see how much risk they're actually taking?
Oh, it happens all the time. And you bring up a really good point is, a lot of people say, well, it's okay, the market should always recover. Well, it has, but who knows when that's going to happen? And like we talked about time's very important.
Right.
So I think, a lot of people don't realize, and they don't kind of do the effect of, hey, contributions and employer matches make a huge difference. If it took you a year and a half to see that dollar figure higher than where it was before it started going down, well, guess what? While you're working, part of that was your contributions and employer contributions. You're not going to have that in retirement, right? If you don't have earned income, you can't contribute to those accounts. And obviously, if you're not working for an employer, there goes that, right? So that's where, especially if we need to touch the money, and I think that's where a lot of people don't necessarily quite understand how much money that they're going to need to draw from. Well, once again, things are going down when we're working. We've got the contributions, we've got the matches, we've got hopefully the market recovery, but we don't have to touch it. So when we're in retirement, it's going to look completely different because most of us are going to have to pull some money from the assets. Well, if things are going down and we take money out, you need a much higher rebound because there's no more contributions going into it.
And I think that's a lot of people, they fully don't understand, or the risk that they have is like, Chris, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
If you had $1 million in the bank and somebody stole half of that from your bank account, how would it make you feel? Most people would say, not very great, all right? So that's what you're talking about. If you had a 25 to 50% loss in the market when you're fixing to retire the day before, you may not even think about retiring at that point in time, because now you're really scared about what to do, whether you should retire now or not. And you may have to work for 2 or 3 more years before you get comfortable again. That's probably not anything that's in the cards for people that thought they were going to retire at a certain age.
I'm sure that's happened to a lot of people in 2001. I'm sure that happened to people in 2007 and 2008. And I'm sure people now are worried about the potential of a market pullback. Here is the thing. There's always going to be the risk of that. And Ralph, as you said earlier, the market doesn't care. It's going to do what it wants to do. But how are you positioned to withstand whatever may come down the line? Because it's not a question of if there's going to be a market pullback over the course of your retirement, but when, and quite frankly, how many times. With a properly structured plan, you can have money that is still thought of as a younger-minded investor to take the ups and the downs there. But as far as the income that's coming in, that isn't jeopardized. At the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, having that income in your retirement. And the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, Ralph Short, Tim Short, the entire team, they can help you create that plan to take on whatever may come down the line. All you have to do is set up a time to speak with them. Go to welcomehomefp.com to schedule that complimentary conversation. First opinion, second opinion, just maybe a little revamp of what you've got right now. Welcomehomefp.com, or give a call, 804-635-3550 for that complimentary conversation. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JP Morgan, and he was answering questions about retirement, and he said, quote, "Problems don't age well." He said these issues need to be tackled head on. Number 1, get rid of debt. Number 2, pay attention to your health. And 3, don't put off estate planning. He ended it all with saying, nothing good or bad lasts forever. Make sure you have a financial plan for all seasons. It's kind of what we've been talking about here for whatever may come down the line. What are you guys' thoughts on this? Do you have to make more adjustments to plans due to the economy or due to changes in your client's life?
Well, I agree that, the idea of problems not going away and not aging well, but the sooner you start, the more options you tend to have. And I think that's what's important. I mean, we talk about, obviously, a big piece of estate planning could potentially be life insurance. Well, guess what? The older we get, the more expensive it's going to be, regardless if you are a pro athlete or you're not, right? So I think it's important to make sure that you've got the options open to you. And, even when it comes down to like the investment piece is, the sooner you start investing and the more you can, the better off you're going to end up being, because compound interest is key. So I think it is definitely huge, but I can tell you, Chris, there are so many people out there that don't want to think about their end of life. But there's 3 things guaranteed. That's death, taxes, and change.
Yeah.
So it is very important to make sure that we've got that figured out. But it's important to not try to build your plan around a prediction. And I think that's where a lot of people are starting to try to figure out how to time certain aspects of this. Well, it's not going to happen. So, we deal with primarily people who are getting close to retirement or in retirement. And it is very much easier to build a really nice plan when they haven't retired, right? We've got a little bit more time. If you're 2 years away, 3 years away, 5 years away, maybe even 10 years away, you're going to have a whole lot more options for you than you do when you walk out the door. But that doesn't mean you still don't plan when you are retired.
And I think, Chris, what Jamie was trying to tell us is that we need to be prepared for the what ifs, the uncertainties of life, because your plans, say, oh, I'm going to have $1 million and I can do this and I can do that. Well, it may happen or it may not. Or it may say, okay, you saved your $1 million and guess what? You're no longer here anymore. So did you enjoy that $1 million that you saved? No, you just never know. But somebody else is going to enjoy it, whether it's your spouse or whether it's your kids or your grandkids. But I think the biggest thing for most people to understand what Jamie was saying is retirement isn't a time just to hope that it's going to be there.
Right.
It's a time to plan for it. You need somebody that helps you, that's fiduciary, that understands what you're trying to do and get you there. Because that's exactly what our job is to help you understand what you want to do and then help guide you to get to that point. because we are going to have the what ifs in the retirement, in life, whatever it is that you're talking about, because all of a sudden your health may deteriorate so quickly right before you retire that you may not be able to do all those things you dreamed of. You know, retirement should be a time to enjoy your family, travel, whatever it is that you've always thought about. It's not to spend every day worrying about whether you have enough money or you don't have enough plan, or you have to worry about whatever's on the evening news. Because if you're like most people out there, when they start looking at the news, they just kind of shake their head and say, all right, what's going to happen to next minute? You know, we never know. And do you have a retirement strategy, or is it just investment statements? That's where a lot of people really get confused, because that's not the same thing. And it needs to be written so you can follow it and make adjustments when things happen that you didn't plan on, because that is going to happen no matter what plan you have in place and no matter who your advisor is. Things are going to change that you never thought about that would change.
There's a difference between retirement accounts and a retirement plan. Hope is not a retirement plan. Your 401k by itself is not a retirement plan. Worrying is not a retirement plan. What the team at Welcome Financial Partners puts together for their clients, that retirement roadmap, that is a plan that takes into account all these factors. Ralph, you said the word fiduciary, and I want to shine a light on that really quick. That means acting legally in the client's best interest, which, to expand on, doesn't mean just saying what the client wants to hear, but rather what the client needs to hear. You know, if people have done these online calculators, and I'm sure they've said, oh, as long as everything stays the way it is, I'm going to be fine. It looks like I'm going to be fine. We all know that things aren't going to stay the way that they are. Jamie Dimon said, you have to plan on the fact that there's going to be fluctuations. There's going to be, detours on the road, and that's where that retirement roadmap comes into play. How do I get back on track to where I want to be? Well, you start by putting together that map, having that map put together for you with the fiduciaries at Welcome Financial Partners, Ralph Short and Tim Short. All you have to do to get started is give a call, 804-635-3550. As a reminder, this is a complimentary appointment. Again, 804-635-3550. There was a study by Northwestern Mutual recently that said retirement planning comes down to just 3 questions. What's coming in, what's going out, and what have you saved? It makes sense, but I can't help but feel like that is an oversimplification. Guys, can somebody plan a successful retirement with just those numbers, or is there more to it?
It doesn't need to be as complicated as some people may think. Okay. Right? I think what it really comes down to, once again, is everybody's numbers, right? So once again, the numbers that are coming in, the numbers that are going out. There's so many people that don't necessarily understand or know what their budget is, right? So people can say, hey, I spend $5,000 a month because I know I've got $6,000 coming in. We're saving about $1,000. Well, that's great, but there's a lot of other things that are going to come into play. Obviously here in Virginia, we've got some personal property tax bills that rear their ugly heads at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. Hopefully nobody from the Department of Taxation is listening to us, but I think there's a lot, and this is part of the program that we use, is we want to kind of shine the light there. We want to make sure that people understand, what it really does cost them to live, because that's what the most important piece is. Because if you think it's $5,000, it's really $10,000, your plan's not going to work out more than likely. So it is very important. There's a lot of people now, once they retire, they're not going to have their pension, right? So no pensions. And if Social Security changes, what is all that going to look like? So is it overcomplicated sometimes? Sure, but I think it's very important that people need to do a little bit of that legwork and make sure that we know how to plan. Because if we don't know how to plan, the plan's not going to work out. So I think it is important for people to focus in on what they're spending, what their budgets look like, but also factor in the fun things too. Odds are is that people don't have the time to, take that 2-week cruise or what have you while they're working, to where if they want to do that when they retire, well, we got to compensate for that as well. So it's important.
And I would also say, Chris, to most people, there's something that we did not talk about here, and there's a thing called the tax bill. So what is your taxes going to be like in retirement? Not to be a buzzkill here today, but that is part of your retirement, whether you want to think that or not. It's just one of those things that we have to be prepared to do, because guess what? There's a lot of people that think they're going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retire, and because of their Social Security, because of their investment accounts, because of possibility of their pension still there, And now all of a sudden they got RMDs. They're making more money while they're in retirement than they are when they are working.
Mm.
Yeah, it is very important because, taxes are going to be there. If we've got pre-tax money, we got pre-tax assets. Obviously, when we start taking the money out, we're going to have to pay taxes. And, I know Dad would tell you the same thing, but there's so many conversations that we talk to folks about, that have done well, and they've done well with saving. They've done well with keeping their income at a certain point. Well, if we just let our money grow, which we all do, everybody can raise their hand and say we want our money to grow.
Of course.
Right? But if it continues to grow pre-tax and we don't spend any of it down, that's going to be a much bigger bill. So it's important to start focusing in on, hey, what can we do to minimize the taxes throughout our lifetime? Because you think about it, if you're proactive with your tax plan, it could save you several $100,000s in your lifetime.
And that's money that you can utilize for whatever it is you see fit versus, what the government sees fit. We won't get into the details about that. But, Ralph, I mentioned earlier, as fiduciaries, you're telling people what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. And taxes is certainly not one of those topics anybody really wants to talk about, but they need to hear it because that is a factor. Obviously, we all want our balances to grow over time. And if it's in pre-tax dollars, guess what? Uncle Sam also wants that because that means when that bill comes due, well, they get their share too. I didn't say fair share, but they get their share. So if there are ways to, minimize, if not outright eliminate some of that tax obligation, I think it's a conversation certainly worth having. And that goes out also into that what's going out sort of thing. Less money going out to Uncle Sam means more money you get to keep to utilize for whatever you want. It is all part of that comprehensive strategy. It is not just about the investments. It is not just about the taxes. It is not just about the fees. It is not just about the income. It's quite frankly all of the above, and that is what you get with that retirement roadmap with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, what Ralph Short and Tim Short draw together for each and every client. There's 3 offices in the Richmond area. I urge you to schedule a time to speak with them. Again, it is complimentary, 804-635-3550. You can also go online to the website, welcomehomefp.com, find out more about them, find the TV schedule, find out when you can see them on TV, learn more about them in a more informal setting, but also reach out, schedule a time, complimentary. As I said before, not going to cost you anything but your time. Could be some of the most valuable time you spend on the way towards your retirement. So I encourage you to set up a time to speak with them over there, welcomehomefp.com. And as always, want to thank you for joining us right here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Stay safe out there. Take care of one another. Gentlemen, always appreciate the time. Hope you have a great week as well. As you wrap up, I'm going to leave you with the final word.
All right, Chris. Well, we appreciate your time as well. And I think you do bring up a really good point as, now is kind of the planning time for everybody for vacations. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it is time to put in some man hours for retirement, planning for retirement. So, anybody out there listening, if you are concerned, if you've got some of these concerns, if you want a second opinion or a first opinion, we bring you into the office and we'll sit down with you and kind of work through the budget and then come up with recommendations, kind of help you visualize what retirement will look like. Completely complimentary to you, but I think it is important. Yes, vacations are important, but It is time to put in a little bit of time additional into thinking about our retirement. So once again, we want to thank everybody for listening and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.